At the empty bus stop, Michael Wright's car slowed to a halt, his eyes fixed on the solitary figure in a rain-soaked uniform. She sat motionless, as if the world had stopped turning for her alone. From the back seat, 8-year-old Emma whispered, "Dad, she looks so sad." The rain kept falling just like it had 3 years ago when Rachel took her final breath. Michael had sworn never to let his heart be vulnerable again. Yet something pulled him from the driver's seat toward the stranger in uniform. "Where are you headed?" "You're coming with us. Some decisions defy logic, but follow the compass of the heart." This is one of those stories. The wipers scraped across the windshield of Michael's aging Subaru. As Portland's familiar rain painted the world in shades of gray, he checked his rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of Emma with her forehead pressed against the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. Her piano lesson had run late, and now they were caught in the downpour that had been threatening all day. "Dad, look," Emma said, pointing toward the bus shelter. "There's a soldier." Michael squinted through the rain-blurred window. There, beneath the fluorescent light of the bus stop, sat a woman in military fatigues, a duffel bag at her feet. Her posture was rigid, but something in the way she stared at the ground spoke of exhaustion beyond physical fatigue. "The buses stopped running an hour ago," Michael muttered, more to himself than to Emma. He checked his watch. An old Rolex that had been his father's, the only timepiece he owned that he hadn't taken apart and reassembled at least once. It was nearly 10 knock. For 3 years since Rachel's death, Michael had lived by routine. Wake up at 6 swig, make Emma's breakfast, pack her lunch, run the watch repair shop, make dinner, help with homework, repeat. It was the only way he knew how to keep their world from falling apart completely. Strangers weren't part of that routine. "Dad?" Emma's voice pulled him back. "Can we help her?" Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Emma? We don't know her. She's probably waiting for someone, but it's raining and the buses aren't running." Emma's logic was simple and devastating, the way only a child's can be. Michael watched as the woman brushed water from her face with a sleeve already soaked through. Something about her isolation echoed in him, a recognition of the invisible weight that bends shoulders and dims eyes. He thought of Rachel's last days, how he'd promised her he would keep his heart open for Emma's sake, if not his own. It was a promise he'd struggled to keep. Before he could talk himself out of it, Michael put the car in park and stepped out into the rain. The cold droplets immediately soaked through his jacket as he approached the bus shelter. "Excuse me," he called out. The woman's head snapped up, her body tensing instantly. Her eyes, hazel with flecks of amber, assessed him with a weariness that spoke of hard-earned caution. "The buses stopped running about an hour ago," Michael said, keeping his distance. "Are you waiting for someone?" "No." Her voice was quiet but firm. "Just missed the last one, I guess." She straightened her back, seeming to gather her dignity around her like armor. "Where are you headed? I could give you a ride." The words surprised Michael as much as they seemed to surprise her. The woman hesitated, glancing down at her duffel bag. "Seattle, but I can wait until morning." "Seattle's 3 hours away," Michael said. "Look, I'm Michael, right? That's my daughter Emma in the car. We live about 10 minutes from here. You can stay the night and I can drive you to the bus station in the morning." The woman studied him with a gaze that seemed to see right through him. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Michael thought about it, rainwater trickling down his neck. "Because there are some people you can't leave standing in the rain." It was what his father had said the day he'd brought Rachel home, a college student stranded with a flat tire during a storm. Michael had married her 18 months later. The soldier's eyes flickered toward the car, where Emma was waving enthusiastically. "I'm Jessica Carter. Just got back from my 3rd tour." She stood, hoisting her duffel with practiced ease. "If you're sure, it's not too much trouble." "It's not," Michael said, though he wasn't entirely convinced. He hadn't had a guest in his home since the funeral. As they approached the car, Emma rolled down her window, her face alight with curiosity. "Hi, I'm Emma. I'm 8. Are you a real soldier?" A ghost of a smile touched Jessica's lips. "Yes, ma'am. Staff Sergeant Jessica Carter, U.S. Army." "Cool. My friend Tyler's dad is a soldier too," but he's never home." Michael winced at his daughter's bluntness, but Jessica just nodded. "That happens a lot in our line of work." The drive home was quiet, except for Emma's occasional questions about Jessica's uniform and the places she'd been. Jessica answered patiently, but briefly, her gaze often drifting to the rain-slicked streets outside. Michael's house sat on a quiet street in a modest neighborhood, a two-story craftsman with peeling blue paint and a porch that sagged slightly in the middle. The front yard, once Rachel's pride, had become a tangle of overgrown shrubs and neglected flower beds. "It's not much," Michael said as he unlocked the door, suddenly self-conscious of the worn furniture and the walls that hadn't seen fresh paint in years. "It's a home," Jessica replied simply, stepping inside with a reverence that suggested she hadn't crossed a threshold that belonged to her in a very long time. Michael showed Jessica to the spare room, which had once been Rachel's studio. He'd packed away her canvases and brushes, but sometimes he still caught the faint scent of oil paints when he opened the door. Now it held a single bed, a dresser, and boxes of things he hadn't found the courage to sort through yet. Bathrooms down the hall, kitchens downstairs. "If you get hungry, make yourself at home," he said, the phrase feeling foreign on his tongue. Jessica set her duffel down carefully. "Thank you." "Really?" Left alone, Michael stood in the hallway, questioning his own judgment. He'd just invited a complete stranger into his home, where his daughter slept. Yet, something about Jessica's eyes, haunted but honest, had compelled him to act against his better instincts. After tucking Emma in, Michael retreated to his workshop in the converted garage. The small space was lined with shelves of watches and clocks in various states of repair. The steady tick-tock, a comforting rhythm that had carried him through many sleepless nights. He picked up a vintage pocket watch he'd been restoring for a client, losing himself in the delicate mechanics until his eyes grew heavy. It was past midnight when he finally came back inside. He paused at the foot of the stairs, noticing a sliver of light beneath the spare room door. Jessica was still awake. He hesitated, then continued up to his own empty bed. Morning came with the pale sunlight of early spring filtering through the clouds. Michael woke to the unfamiliar sound of voices downstairs. Following the noise to the kitchen, he found Emma sitting at the table, watching intently as Jessica flipped pancakes with military precision. MJ turned at the sound and noted decisively that Emily's glam. "Dad!" Emma exclaimed. "Jess is making breakfast. She says they're soldier pancakes because they stand at attention." Jessica turned, a faint flush coloring her cheeks. "Hope that's okay. Emma was hungry, and I wanted to thank you for letting me stay." Michael stood frozen in the doorway. For 3 years, it had been just him and Emma in the quiet morning light. The sight of someone else, someone new in Rachel's kitchen, sent a confused jolt through his chest. "It's fine," he managed. He didn't have to do that. "I wanted to," Jessica set a plate of perfectly golden pancakes on the table. "Coffee's ready too." They ate together, an awkward trio connected by circumstance rather than choice. Emma filled the silence with chatter about school and her upcoming science project, while Michael watched Jessica's careful interactions with his daughter. "So," Michael said when Emma had finished and gone upstairs to get dressed. "Bus station." Jessica stared into her coffee cup. "Actually, if it's not too much trouble, I might need to stay one more night." She looked up, meeting his eyes directly. "The friend I was going to stay with in Seattle, things got complicated. I just need a day to figure out my next step." Michael should have felt imposition, perhaps even suspicion. Instead, he felt a strange relief. "You can stay," he said, surprising himself again. "Emma likes having you here." Jessica's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Thank you. I can help out around the house. Maybe do some repairs. I noticed your porch steps are loose. You don't have to earn your keep," Michael said. But Jessica shook her head. "I need to keep busy. It helps with things." Michael understood that need all too well. That day, Michael took Emma to school before opening his shop, Wright's Timepieces, a small storefront downtown that had been his father's before him. Jessica had declined his offer to come along, saying she needed to make some calls. He'd left her with a spare key, a decision that had him second-guessing himself throughout the morning. By closing time, his worry had grown into a knot of regret. What if she'd stolen something? What if she wasn't who she claimed to be? He rushed home, prepared for the worst, only to find Jessica on her knees in the front yard, pulling weeds from what had once been Rachel's garden. She looked up as he approached, wiping soil from her hands. "Hope you don't mind," I started on the porch, but then I saw these flowers struggling to come up through all the weeds. She pointed to tiny green shoots barely visible among the overgrowth. "Crocuses," Michael said quietly. "Rachel planted them. Our first spring here." Jessica's expression softened with understanding. "I can stop if you'd rather. I didn't touch it." Michael looked at the small cleared patch, the first sign of care the garden had received since Rachel fell ill. "No," he said finally. "They should be able to grow." That evening, after Emma was in bed, Michael found Jessica sitting on the porch swing, staring out at the night. He hesitated, then sat beside her, offering a mug of tea. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Don't sleep much these days," she admitted, accepting the mug. The porch light caught the fine lines around her eyes, signs of strain rather than age. "Emma wants to know if you'll still be here tomorrow." Jessica smiled faintly. "She's a special kid. You're doing a good job with her." "I'm trying." Michael took a sip of his own tea, the warmth seeping into his cold hands. "It's been just the two of us for 3 years now. Her mother, Rachel, she had cancer. It happened fast." Jessica was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry. That's a different kind of battlefield." "What about you?" Michael asked, surprising himself with his directness. "Where are you really headed?" Jessica's hands tightened around her mug. "Honestly, I don't know." She took a deep breath. 3 months ago, my unit was hit, IED. 2 of my closest friends didn't make it. I got lucky. Just some shrapnel and a concussion. They sent me home with a Purple Heart and a medical discharge. Her voice grew distant. "But coming back, everything feels wrong. Like I'm wearing someone else's skin." Michael nodded, understanding more than he could express. "After Rachel died, I kept expecting to wake up from the nightmare. But then you realize this is it. This is the new reality, and you have to find a way to live in it." "How did you do it?" Jessica asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "And all day at a time. Some days, 1 hour at a time." Michael looked toward Emma's window. "Having Emma helped. I had to keep going for her sake. But finding purpose again, that's the hardest part." They sat in silence, 2 strangers sharing the familiar weight of grief. The night air was cool, but not uncomfortable, and for the first time in years, Michael felt the smallest crack in the wall he'd built around himself. The next morning, Michael invited Jessica to come to the shop with him after they dropped Emma at school. She accepted with a gratitude that suggested she needed the distraction as much as he needed the company. At Wright's timepieces, Jessica sat at the counter while Michael worked, watching his precise movements as he repaired an antique grandfather clock. "My grandfather had one like that," she said, breaking a comfortable silence. "He taught me to listen for the different sounds it made." Said a healthy clock sounded like a heartbeat. Michael glanced up from his work. He was right. Mechanical timepieces are a lot like living things. They need care, attention. When something goes wrong, you have to find the source of the problem, not just treat the symptoms. "Is that your philosophy for everything?" Jessica asked with the hint of a smile. "I try," Michael said, returning to his work. "Doesn't always translate to real life, though." That afternoon, Jessica accompanied Michael to pick up Emma from school. As they waited outside the building, Michael noticed Jessica tense beside him, her eyes scanning the crowds with military alertness. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Just crowds," Jessica murmured, still getting used to being back. Before Michael could respond, Emma burst through the school doors, her face tear-streaked and her normally bouncy step heavy. Michael knelt immediately as she approached. "Emma, what happened?" Emma sniffled, glancing between Michael and Jessica. "Tyler said I was making up stories. He said I didn't have a soldier friend staying at our house. And then he said," her voice dropped to a whisper, he said, "I don't have a mom because she didn't want me." Michael's face flushed with anger, but it was Jessica who stepped forward, kneeling beside Emma. "Hey," she said gently, "Tyler's wrong on both counts. I am your friend, and I am a soldier. And as for your mom, Jessica glanced at Michael, who nodded slightly. Your dad told me about her. She loved you very much. Sometimes the people who love us the most have to leave us, but it's never ever because they want to. Emma wiped her eyes. You promise? Soldier's honor, Jessica said, holding up her hand in a solemn vow. On the drive home, Emma's spirits lifted as Jessica told her carefully edited stories of her time in the service. The camaraderie, the desert sunsets, the stray dog her unit had adopted. Michael listened, hearing the affection in Jessica's voice when she spoke of her fellow soldiers, the chosen family she'd found in the military. That night, after dinner, Jessica received a phone call that drove her to the backyard. Her voice a tense murmur through the kitchen window. When she came back inside, her face was pale. Everything okay? Michael asked, loading the dishwasher. Jessica leaned against the counter, her composure slipping for the first time since he'd met her. My friend in Seattle, the one I was going to stay with, she can't take me in after all. Her husband's deployed, and she's dealing with some family stuff. She ran a hand through her short brown hair. I'll figure something out, maybe a motel until my benefits kick in. Michael watched her, recognizing the look of someone trying desperately to hold it together. Why Seattle? He asked. Do you have family there? No family anywhere, really. Jessica's smile was brittle. I grew up in foster care. The army was the first real home I had. The revelation hung in the air between them. Michael thought of his own small family, broken but still intact, and the empty rooms in his house that echoed with absence. Stay, he said suddenly. Not just for another night. Stay until you figure things out. Jessica looked up, surprise and weariness battling in her expression. Michael, you barely know me. I know enough, he said. I know you're good with Emma. I know you respect other people's space and boundaries, and I know what it's like to need a safe place to land. He hesitated. Besides, Emma would be heartbroken if her soldier friend disappeared. Jessica's eyes glistened in the kitchen light. Are you sure? No, Michael admitted with a small laugh. But I'm offering anyway. That night, Michael was awakened by a cry from the guest room. He lay still for a moment, unsure if he dreamed it until he heard it again. A muffled sound of distress. He got up and padded down the hallway, pausing outside Jessica's door. Jessica? He called softly, knocking once. Are you okay? There was no answer, but he could hear ragged breathing. He opened the door slowly, ready to retreat if needed. In the dim light from the hallway, he could see Jessica sitting upright in bed, her body rigid, eyes open, but unseeing. Jessica, he said again, keeping his voice calm. You're safe. You're in Portland in my house. Emma's asleep down the hall. Slowly, awareness returned to her eyes. She blinked, focusing on him. Michael, she said, her voice. I'm sorry. Did I wake Emma? No, she sleeps like a rock. Michael hesitated in the doorway. Nightmare. Jessica nodded, drawing her knees to her chest. It's always the same one. The explosion, the dust so thick you can't breathe, and the silence afterward that tells you something's wrong because there should be screaming. Michael crossed the room and sat carefully on the edge of the bed. I get them too. Different scenario, same feeling of helplessness. Jessica's breathing gradually steadied. They didn't prepare us for this part. How to come home, how to be a person again. I don't think anyone can prepare you for that, Michael said. When Rachel died, people kept telling me it would get easier with time. But it doesn't get easier. You just learn to carry it differently. Jessica looked at him. Really looked at him as if seeing past the polite distance he maintained with everyone. You know what the worst part is? I feel guilty for surviving. Like I stole someone else's chance to come home. Survivor's guilt. Michael nodded. I felt that too. Why her and not me? Why did she get cancer when she did everything right? Never smoked, ate healthy, exercised. Well, I was the one who lived on coffee and never saw a doctor. Does it ever go away? Jessica asked. Not completely, Michael admitted. But one day, you realize that living a good life isn't betraying them. It's honoring them. They talked until the early hours of the morning, sharing pieces of themselves they'd kept hidden from others. Michael told her about the day Rachel was diagnosed, how they'd sat in the doctor's parking lot for an hour afterward, unable to drive home and make it real. Jessica spoke of the friends she'd lost, not just to combat, but to the invisible wounds that followed them home. As dawn broke, they'd forged something neither had expected, a connection born of shared understanding, the recognition of similar scars. The next day, Michael found a letter in Jessica's duffel bag while looking for a spare blanket she'd requested. It was from the VA hospital's psychiatric ward, a discharge summary with recommendations for continued therapy. When Jessica returned from helping Emma with her science project, he confronted her, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. "Where are you going to tell me about this?" he asked, his voice tight. Jessica froze in the doorway, her face draining of color. "You went through my things?" "I was looking for a blanket," Michael said, the excuse sounding hollow even to him. "Jessica, this says you were hospitalized after a suicide attempt." Jessica's shoulders sagged, not with guilt, but with exhaustion. "Yes, I was 6 weeks ago. Is that what you want to hear? Well, why didn't you tell me? I've got Emma to think about." "I would never hurt Emma," Jessica interrupted, her voice sharp with pain. "Or you. I was in a dark place after losing my unit. The night they discharged me, I had nowhere to go. That's why I was at that bus stop. I didn't even know where I was headed, just away." Michael felt his anger deflating, replaced by a complicated mix of fear and compassion. "Are you still in that place?" Jessica met his gaze steadily. "No. Being here with you and Emma, it's given me something I didn't have before. A reason to get up in the morning. I need to know you're getting help," Michael said, his voice softening. "Professional help. I have appointments set up at the VA here in Portland," Jessica assured him. "I was going to tell you. I was afraid you'd see me differently, that you'd see me as broken." Michael looked down at the paper in his hand, then carefully folded it and handed it back to her. "We're all a little broken, Jess. That's how the light gets in." Over the following weeks, a tentative new normal emerged. Jessica began therapy at the VA, often returning quiet and thoughtful, but steadier each time. Michael gave her small tasks at the shop, which grew into a regular position as she demonstrated a natural talent for the delicate work of watch repair. Emma blossomed with Jessica's presence, delighting in having someone who would listen to her elaborate stories and help with homework when Michael was busy with a complicated repair. The three of them fell into an easy rhythm, a family pieced together by circumstance rather than blood. One Saturday morning in May, Emma burst into the kitchen where Michael and Jessica were sharing coffee in comfortable silence. "Can we fix the garden today?" she asked, her eyes bright with excitement. Ms. Peterson said, "It's the perfect day for planting." Michael and Jessica exchanged a glance. The garden had been Rachel's domain, her sanctuary. Even the small section Jessica had cleared remained a painful reminder of all he'd lost. "I don't know, Emma," Michael began. But Jessica cut in gently. "I think it's a great idea," she said. "But it's up to your dad." Emma turned to Michael, her expression so hopeful it made his heart ache. Mom would want her flowers to grow again, wouldn't she? Michael felt something shift inside him, like the final piece of a watch mechanism clicking into place. "Yes," he said softly. Yes, she would. They spent the day in the garden clearing weeds and turning soil that hadn't been touched in years. Jessica showed Emma how to plant seedlings, her hands sure and gentle as they worked the earth. Michael found himself sharing stories about Rachel. Not the sad ones about her illness, but the happy memories of her laugh, her passion for painting, the way she'd dance in the kitchen when she thought no one was watching. As the sun began to set, they stood back to admire their work. The garden was nowhere near its former glory, but it was a beginning, a promise of growth to come. "It's beautiful," Jessica said, dirt streaking her cheek. "It will be," Michael corrected, but he was smiling. That night, after Emma was asleep, Michael found Jessica in the garden again, sitting on the old stone bench beneath the maple tree. "Room for one more?" he asked. Jessica moved over and he sat beside her, their shoulders almost touching. The spring air was cool but pleasant, carrying the scent of freshly turned earth and new possibilities. "I got a job offer today," Jessica said after a moment. "The VA has a program for veterans transitioning to civilian work. It's here in Portland." Michael felt a strange flutter in his chest, hope mixed with fear. "That's great, Jess. Are you going to take it?" "I'd like to," she said, her voice careful. "But I wanted to make sure it wouldn't complicate things. With us, I mean, whatever us is." Michael looked up at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. "I don't know what us is either," he admitted. "I just know that when you came into our lives, something that had been dormant started growing again." He turned to face her. "I'm not ready to put a name to it yet, but I'd like to find out what it could be." Jessica's smile was soft in the gathering dusk. "I'd like that too." The next day, Emma presented them with a drawing she'd made for her art class. It showed 3 figures standing in front of a house with an elaborate garden. "This is us," she explained, pointing to each figure. "Dad, me, and Jess." Michael watched Jessica's face as she studied the drawing, saw the moment her composure slipped and her eyes filled with tears. "Do you like it?" Emma asked anxiously. "I love it," Jessica whispered, pulling Emma into a gentle hug. "It's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever made for me." That afternoon, they visited a local nursery and bought a young cherry tree, the same type Rachel had always wanted to plant but never had the chance to. Together, the 3 of them dug a hole in the center of the garden, carefully lowering the sapling into its new home. "Mom loved cherry blossoms," Emma said as she patted soil around the base of the tree. "She said they remind us that beautiful things don't last forever, so we should enjoy them while they're here." Michael felt Jessica's eyes on him and met her gaze over Emma's head. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of life's fragility and the courage it takes to begin again. "Your mom was very wise," Jessica said to Emma, "and she'd be so proud of you." As the sun set on their newly planted tree, Michael looked at the 2 people beside him. His daughter, who carried Rachel's spirit in her smile, and Jessica, who had arrived like an unexpected gift when he'd forgotten how to receive one. He thought about how grief and joy could exist in the same heart, how endings could become beginnings if you were brave enough to turn the page. "Destiny isn't about what we lose," he said softly, "but who we find along the way." Jessica's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. "And sometimes," she added, "who finds us when we need them most?" In the gentle spring twilight, as Emma chattered about where they should plant flowers next, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 long years. The quiet certainty that they would be okay. Not perfect, not unmarked by their losses, but whole in a new way. Their broken pieces fitting together to create something unexpected and beautiful. It's something I'd be laughing at too. But instead, a bottle with almost no aftertaste. It was like injecting an existential drug, which even by the same token, Michael felt something he hadn't in the past deep down inside. Some decisions defy logic, but follow the compass of the heart. On a rainy night in Portland, Michael Wright had followed his heart when he stopped for a soldier at a bus stop. In doing so, he hadn't just offered shelter to a stranger. He had opened the door to healing for Jessica, for Emma, and finally, for himself. Thank you for listening to today's story. If this tale of unexpected connections and second chances touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Remember, sometimes the most profound healing comes not from moving on, but from allowing someone new to walk beside you on the journey forward. Until next time, keep your heart open to the possibilities that each new day brings.